Now, let's talk about remote working and community management inside of a game studio or a remote game studio, because that's one of the trends that I've been noticing for a while now, where employers offer very often packages where you could remotely work, simply because of the fact that a lot of developers are working remotely. So the community manager job can be done either way. It is really not depending on physical presence within the office, especially if the developers that are on the game are flexible and working from home or just working remotely from any place in the world. What community manager needs to remember though is that keeping up to date with the game development and the game discussion and communicating with the rest of the dev team very actively is the most important part. So not only there is a patch coming in 3 days, but diving deep into the backlog of the game development process, taking a look at the things that developers may not tell you right away that it's coming because they're not sure. So you having an input on what kind of things could be developed for the players is actually extremely important, because remember, you are the game developer. You are the person that knows perfectly fine what the players actually want. What do they need? And so if you do get an insight into the game development remotely by going through the backlog, going through the sprints, going through the development process overall, and keeping up to date with it, you are going to be able to plan your content schedule, your engagement strategy, or whatever it is much more easily, because you know you have the insight into what is going on with the game. So you know the present, you know where the players are, you know how they feel. You sit on the forums, you sit on the social media all day. But at the same time, you know the future. And that is what makes you the most powerful man in in both sides. So prepare yourself for those kind of uh, lines of thinking, right? So think about, what can I do for the players that they don't know about? How can I delight them? And how I can do that together with the development team so I don't put my face in front of them all the time. Because very often what players can think about you is just a talking marketing head. That's not true though. You don't really work for the marketing team uh, directly, at least. But you also don't work for the development team. You are sort of an in between. And that's why you need to communicate with not only development team, but the PR and marketing and branding teams as well. And make sure that those plans are also aligned with yours. But your approach needs to always be a little bit more human, a little bit more natural, as we mentioned again in the authentic segment of the community management playlist that I have generated on my channel. Right? So stay up to date with all of those teams, and if it's face to face, great. If it's all offline, I mean, remotely, yeah, that's also doable. And try to inject yourself into the calls and into the meetings very often. Stay up to date with the discussions, stay up to date with the plans that people have, because you need to plan your schedule as well. How are you going to communicate with the players? How are you going to get a feedback? How are you going to make sure that the feedback is being heard? And how do you, in the end, deliver value to the product? Because again, remember, your job is here to also make the game better. So working remotely, yes, doable, perfectly doable, but make sure that you are part of every single team and you are trying to inject yourself into every single aspect, because Only then you're going to be able to understand what players and how players will be able to react to those things. And as you build credibility with those teams, you are over time going to simply be asked more questions. I had the opportunity before to have a branding team come to me and ask me, hey, what do you think about this campaign? How are the players going to react to it? And I was 100% spot on in terms of reaction. So the more experience you build, you're going to be able to give feedback to all of those teams and make sure that they actually do a great job at whatever their goal is. And now, very often, players think that branding and marketing are all full of evil corporate people that just want to take your money. And while the second part may be true, because the game needs to make money, the idea is that they also want to delight players with great visuals and great ideas and great campaigns, because ultimately they want to make the game look good. But that cannot be away from a lot of kind of examples that are beyond the realm of reality, right? So the reality needs to match the campaign. You need to be genuine with your players. So try to promote as much as possible the feedback about being real with the players. Do not try to convey any false messaging or false advertising, right? And I'm not talking about only branding or marketing. I'm talking here about development as well. So that is also the key. So try to represent the players, but try to do that in a way that they would accept. And I am going to cover in another video how to sell your idea to any of the team that you may want to have difficulty communicating with, that you may have difficulty communicating with, and how to get them to hear you. Because again, it's all about credibility. You're not going to build credibility within a few days of you working at the start, but over time and over time, as you are reporting your work, people are going to basically realize much more how what your importance is, and how much do you know your audience, your players. So you are the most critical part between the developer and the player, and you know the player much more intimately than anybody else in the development studio. So make sure you utilize that, either face-to-face or online. If you're doing it online, though, try to make sure that you have more transparency into your work. Try to have wiki pages, customized reports, weekly reports that are a routine, and expose your work as much as you can, because that is when you shine, and that is when you can show what your value actually is. So that's pretty much it. I had experiences working remotely and in-house for a while, and it's definitely something that is doable. In my first in my 2 years in CCP Games, I actually had my manager be remote in Iceland while I was in Shanghai, and it worked just fine. I would have a weekly call, would have weekly reviews and updates, and all of that would work out just fine. So try to make sure, again, that you're exposing your work as much as you can. Face to face, it's much easier. Look at my previous video if you want to learn more about face-to-face communication and how to understand what people care about. That's pretty much it.